Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football Live is presented by Crown Royal and by EA Sports Madden NFL 21.
Good morning and welcome to season 15 of Fantasy Football Live right here on Yahoo Sports. Over the next 90 minutes, we will give you everything you need to set those lineups before the rest of week one kicks off, because it is finally here. I am Liz Loza, and joining me in our all-new virtual studio are some familiar faces. We've got Andy Behrens in Chicago, Matt Harmon in Los Angeles, Tank Williams in San Francisco, and joining the cast for the first time this season from Las Vegas is betting analyst Minty Betts. Welcome, girl. Guys, before we get into week one, hello, what are you most excited for this season? Andy, you kick us off.
Oh, for me, it's undoubtedly the rookies, especially this week. Unprecedented offseason, lack of a preseason. We thought the rookies would kind of get eased into the mix. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire just goes off for 138 yards, 25 carries. So I'm excited to see what Zach Moss can do, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, and all the rest.
All right, Matt, what about you?
Well, Andy mentioned the rookies. He mentioned Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It dawned on me Thursday night that I don't even know what Clyde Edwards-Helaire even looked like in a Chiefs uniform, or David Johnson in a Texans uniform. So aesthetics are important. I'm excited now that we didn't get preseason to see what some of these new players in new places look like in their uniform.
All right, Matt's excited about uniform reveals. Tank, what's got you hyped up this morning?
Well, I learned as an athlete not to take anything for granted, because each game could be your last, but I never thought I would have to take football for granted. So I'm excited that today is September 13th. It's the wifey's birthday, and I actually have football to watch and fantasy football to play. So if anyone thought the football guys didn't exist, this is your proof.
Well, I don't know if your wife would agree that the timing on that lined up perfectly well, but hey, happy birthday. Minty, welcome to Fantasy Football Live. What are you excited for in 2020 this year?
Well, I'm excited to see the Raiders in my hometown of Las Vegas. Although I won't be seeing them in person, I'm excited to see how they perform, how they do. I'm also excited to see Tom Brady not in New England and Cam not in Carolina. So we'll see how it plays out.
All right, I know for me, it's always rooting for an underdog. That is how I roll. So I'm most excited to see which of these under-the-radar players, whether they're rookies or maybe even current practice squad members, emerge and become the unexpected heroes of the season. So now that we've gotten our pleasantries out of the way, right, we've talked about the good things, we have to talk about some maybe not so pleasant things. Let's turn our attention to the injury report and get some updates here. News out of Philly yesterday was that Miles Sanders did not make the trip and will miss the Eagles opener in the nation's capital with a hamstring injury. The player that was very, very hyped up heading into this season. Receiver Kenny Golladay is inactive against the division rival Bears. Bears finally getting a break. He is nursing a hamstring injury. In the afternoon game, Bucs receiver Mike Evans was upgraded to questionable and will play against the Saints, but maybe on a pitch count. Finally, Chargers receiver Mike Williams will give it a go this afternoon against the Bengals. He's been dealing with a shoulder injury. And remember, this show is all about you. So get your roster questions answered by hitting us up at Yahoo Fantasy and using the AskFFL hashtag, or drop a question in the chat and we'll try to get to as many as we can on the show. Plus, our very own Scott Pianowski is answering questions all morning long live on Twitter. But remember, if you want to be noticed, make sure to use that hashtag AskFFL. All right, let's jump into our fantasy freebies for this week. These are players who are under 25% started in Yahoo leagues and could do damage for fantasy managers. For me, it is Deshaun Jackson. Now, I know that he is 33 years old and he is not super hyped up, but what did he do week one of the 2019 season? Well, he went off for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. And who is his opponent? Oh, the Washington football team. Who's his opponent today? The Washington football team. He is the healthiest and most experienced receiver on the field today for the Eagles. I think he has an opportunity to smash. Matt, who you got?
Yeah, look, if you drafted one of the top tight ends in fantasy football, you can just ignore what I'm about to say. But TJ Hawkinson is a guy to me that I think if you drafted, somebody later than tight end 5, you really want to think about throwing out here today. This guy is he could lead the Lions in receiving easily with Kenny Golladay out for today. And let's not forget that the Lions were one of the best vertical passing teams in the NFL when Matthew Stafford was healthy. In fact, they led the NFL in yards per completion with Stafford under center. I see Hawkinson getting some of those vertical looks with Galladay out, and I wouldn't be surprised if this Bears-Lions game goes over the projected total here in week 1. If you need a tight end streamer, Hawkinson is my favorite guy this week for sure.
And Tank, who do you have up?
I'm rolling with Emmanuel Sanders now. We know Vegas expects a shootout between the Bucs and the Saints, and whenever there's a shootout with the Saints involved, Drew Brees is going to put the ball up at least about 40 times. Now, can't guard Mike is going to get his 10-plus targets, but they have to go somewhere else. And the last time Manny Sanders was in New Orleans, he played for the Niners, and he was skating through that secondary like Michelle Kwan. So now that he's actually on the Saints, I feel like y'all Yahoos need to get it together because only 17% of y'all got him in your lineup, and this dude is going to be a crowd pleaser today in the Dome.
Well, those are all good takes. So let's talk about fantasy because that's the name of the show and how it's all about matchups. But here's a wrinkle. In Madden, ratings are everything. So with that in mind, it's time for our Madden 21 matchup ratings. Each week, we'll look at some of the biggest names in the game and give their matchup its own Madden rating based on how favorable it is. Andy and Matt are breaking it all down. What do you got this week, gentlemen?
Yeah, we're going to kick off Madden matchup ratings with 3 early round running backs. Now, you drafted these guys in spots where, realistically, you're probably not going to sit them on a fantasy bench. But one of them's got a great matchup, the other 2 not so hot. Let's start with Josh Jacobs, and we rated this matchup a 99 because we weren't allowed to go any higher. Against the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers last season allowed the most fantasy points to opposing running backs, and that defense got a whole lot worse. I can't even name them all. Wow, what a great matchup for Jacobs. He was a missed tackle machine last year, averaged 100 scrimmage yards per game. Harmon, what's he going to go for this week? 240 yards, 250? Give me a number.
I mean, I tell you what, Andy, he's definitely going to make all the goofballs like me who ranked him outside of the top 12 running backs because we were worried about the lack of receiving work look like total idiots here in week 1. He's going to run all over the Panthers. I mean, give me a break. Some of these guys that they're starting on defense legitimately were in college last year. Most of them, honestly, were in college last year. So I expect Jacob to have a monster game today. Really like this game in general as a very value DFS play for sure.
Okay, we got to talk about Nick Chubb, too. Nick Chubb last year, it was a tale of 2 very different games against the Baltimore Ravens. He went off in the first matchup, multiple touchdowns, 160 yards, got whatever he wanted. Then in the second one with Kareem Hunt in the mix, relatively quiet week. The Ravens defense, of course, fierce defensive front that got even better through free agency. They allowed the 7th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs last year. I would look to steer clear of Chubb this week. We called the matchup a 68. I feel like that's actually kind of generous.
Yeah, it might be a little generous. I saw Nick Chubb had an awareness of 89 in Madden, so I'm very sure he is aware of the fact that Kareem Hunt will be playing in this game, fresh off a big contract extension. So he's obviously going to eat into Nick Chubb's receiving work. And as you mentioned, the Ravens were a good defense last year. Well, they've only added pieces. They added a linebacker early in the draft. They added veteran Calais Campbell, Derek Wolfe. A lot of guys are on that front that is just going to make this a tough rushing environment for Nick Chubb. Really, I like the Browns offense to bounce back this year in general, but I think week 1 could be a pretty tough slog.
Okay, last guy we got to talk about, Saquon Barkley. Now, you're basically never benching Saquon Barkley. He's probably matchup proof, but this one is so tough. We rated this one against Pittsburgh on Monday night a 59. Pittsburgh last year allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points to opposing rushers. They only gave up 7 touchdowns to opposing running backs. Now, Saquon, of course, even if the run isn't there, can be a valuable member of the passing game. We know he could catch 5, 6, 7 balls in any given week. Got a very safe floor. Still, this matchup, absolutely brutal. What say you?
I say don't get all up in your feelings about the fact that Saquon Barkley might not get off to the hottest start, okay? You have like the 2nd best back in fantasy. Give me a break. You'll be quite all right. But like you said, silver lining to this, even if the rushing game isn't there for Saquon, I expect Pittsburgh to really get over on this Giants defense. Therefore, there's going to be a lot of dump-off opportunities when Daniel Jones is under pressure and trailing in the second half. Saquon could easily catch 7 passes in this game.
All right, guys, remember to check out Madden 21, available now worldwide.
All right, let's turn our attention to our first over-under for week 1. We pick a stat and then predict whether we think that player will go over or under that number. We're starting with Leonard Fournette, who's been a member of the Bucs for about a week. Will he go over or under 13.5 touches this afternoon against the Saints? I'm gonna go first, and my answer is off the top, under. Before Fournette was even added to this backfield, I had Rojo projected for 12 carries and 2 catches. That's 14 total touches. Now that Fournette is in the mix, I don't expect that number to go up. I don't expect him to immediately unseat Rojo. Also, who cares? Even if Leonard Fournette touches the ball 13.5 times, he ain't doing nothing with it, not just because he is wholly inefficient, but also because the New Orleans run defense was one of just 8 teams to hold their opponents to under 100 rushing yards per contest. This whole situation in the backfield is under. Tank, take it to you.
Now, you know I'm feeling you, Lindsay. I'm going under, too, because Leonard Fournette said this is his first time having a quarterback, but this is also going to be his first time in the offense not being the #1 option. And we're going to find out real soon, like, if he likes winning more than getting his touches. So, yeah, it's coming soon. But, like, when you look at it from a game perspective, the game script is definitely not in Leonard Fournette's favor. It's more Rojo. This is going to be a shootout. I see Tom Brady throwing the ball all over the field, which means that Lenny going to be riding that pine under.
Minty, is it going to be a sweep?
It is going to be a sweep. It's unanimous. I also like the under as well. I think we're going to see lower production with Leonard Fournette on this Bucs team. Tom Brady loves to throw the ball. He's going to utilize his wide receivers a lot. Bruce Arians also loves the passing game. Under is the play here.
All right. Well, it's been a minute. So let's check in with social media and answer some of your roster questions. Don't forget to send your questions to the hashtag AskFFL. Our first tweet comes from someone fantastic, I'm sure. It is Nathan Hutchinson at SweetLegs65. He needs a flex option, standard scoring, Ronald Jones, speaking of the Bucs backfield, or Boston Scott. All right, I'm going to give this one to Andy. I know you spent a lot of time before the show started talking about Boston Scott. So what advice do you have for Nathan here?
Yeah, conducted a pre-FFL chat for about 30 minutes, and it sure seemed like 90 to 95% of the questions were Boston Scott related. I am definitely starting him here. I have no worries necessarily about the distribution of touches in this backfield. We've seen it when he gets a full workload, exactly how good it can be. Week 17 last year, it was 3 touchdowns. Very effective receiver as well. He caught 24 of his 26 targets last year. You got to figure he's going to get, 65, 70% of the backfield touches with Miles Sanders out this week. We'll see a little bit of Corey Clement, but it's mostly going to be the Boston Scott show. This is going to be a very good fantasy week.
I don't think anyone is going to disagree with that. So let's go to the next one. It is from Kenny Betancourt at Kenny Lieb, PPR league here. Evan Ingram or Hayden Hurst. Ooh, this is good. Matt, I'm going to give it to you because we're going to talk about Hayden Hurst a little bit later. What say you between Ingram and Hurst?
Look, Evan Ingram is coming into this season healthy for once. He avoided the PUP list in training camp. This might be the healthiest that he is all 2020. I think if you got him on your fantasy team, he could easily be one of the best tight ends in fantasy this year. So you got to roll him out here, even if it's a tough spot against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Like I mentioned with Saquon Barkley, they should be a negative game script a lot. And Evan Ingram is probably the favorite to lead the team in targets if they are all healthy here in week 1.
All right, and final question here. Maybe we'll take a couple, but let's see. What's the next one up? Half-point PPR, looking for my flex. This one comes from David Extra-ish, 187. John Brown versus the New York Jets, or Kareem Hunt versus the Ravens. We have talked a lot about Kareem Hunt. Tank, what do you think here? Brown or Hunt? Wide receiver or running back?
Actually, I'm not a big fan of Josh Allen, but I got to go John Brown because you have no Jamal Adams in that secondary now with the Jets, and I feel like Josh Allen, if he's going to be the guy that they expect him to be, he should be able to go over the top. And when you look at it from the Browns' perspective, I feel like the game script will probably be in Hunt's favor since the Ravens should be up on the Browns, but I still think Nick Chubb is going to get a lot of the carries, and he will be involved in the pass game, so I'm going to lean to Smokey Brown.
All right. Any disagreement there, Matt? I know that you love Smokey. Andy, do you agree with Tank's analysis on that one?
Yeah, not only do I agree on John Brown, I agree on not totally liking Josh Allen, but still I gotta go Brown here. I want to steer clear of Browns in opening week.
All right. Let's see. Tweet 4 here is from Sean Ludley, and he needs a wide receiver 2 to replace Sutton. So 1 point PPR. Sterling Shepard, Jalen Reagor, he has Wentz, or Jamison Crowder. Ooh, that floor play. Matt, what do you think about Jamison Crowder? I know you have some feelings about that particular player in that particular system. I'll let you have this one.
Oh, you know I love me a good 20 targets for 7.3 yards per catch. The Adam Gase way, baby. It's week 1. We saw it last year against the Bills. We'll probably see it again here. It's disgusting. It doesn't feel right, and it shouldn't feel right, by the way. But fine, it'll get you some points in your fantasy line.
I mean, sometimes you just need to do what you need to do, and I agree, that is the floor, even though the floor ain't pretty, but hopefully get you the W this week in week 1. So now it's time for our first break here on Fantasy Football Live. When we come back, Andy and Tank will face off debating whether Cam or Jimmy G is the better play in week 1. Stay tuned.
Ow, what? What they doing out there? 6 on 6 between the sticks, tossing out trick plays like a magician on Wednesday. Did this dude just do this? The Yard got spokesplayer on mute.
Sometimes you need a friend.
The NFL is back, and you could be watching free live football on your phone. Just download the app, allow your location, and get live, local, and primetime games. Thursdays, Sundays, and Mondays. Your favorite teams. All the highlights. With the Yahoo Sports app, you get free live football.
Hi, I'm Hannah. Welcome to The Bandwagon.
Every week, I'm going to be telling you which team you should root for right now.
This week, I'm bandwagoning the Twins.
The Yankees.
The Rays. Reasons to bandwagon the A's baseball's best 15 outfield assists. He dodged getting murdered and then did a push-up. Kevin Kiermaier has the bluest eyes in baseball. Now let's do fan, not a fan.
Yeah, meltdown.
Be careful, physics. I'm a fan of what happened to him. Not a fan of eating mayonnaise straight. Learn to beat the shift.
Oh, right. Thin Mints.
Hey everybody, I'm Soledad O'Brien. There is a crisis unfolding in America, and you might not have heard about it. College students who are facing both hunger and homelessness. For my latest documentary, which you can find on Yahoo Life, we take a look at 4 students who are so strapped that they have to decide between eating meals and paying for college. Please watch this documentary, which you can find exclusively on Yahoo Life.
The key to victory is making it to the finish line. Moderate your drinking and pick a lineup that'll go the distance. It's time for a Crown Royal water break.
Break with my girl, Lizzie. Now, it's been a long off season, and a lot of players have gotten a lot of coverage for the right and wrong reasons, but I'm interested to hear, who are you ready to take a break from, Lizzie?
Oh, you know, I love Alvin Kamara, and I'm not even mad about what he did to me last year, but he sure does like to talk. And a lot of that talk now will be because he got himself paid these $75 million in new money. How are you feeling about Alvin Kamara this offseason?
Actually, I was feeling the same way. I mean, we've been hearing a lot about Alvin Kamara, and then a lot of people who drafted him last year was salty as I don't know what, because Latavius Murray was still in touchdowns. Kamara was dealing with that banged up knee, but now that old boy's getting paid, I mean, hopefully he can go ahead and ball out and justify that bank account and that fantasy draft spot.
Well, all that salt left folks dehydrated, but I think he replenished us a little bit too much. I don't need any more right now. You know, I asked this question to some of my followers on Instagram, and I got a couple of interesting answers. This one came from @NatalieC.Adams, and she said, Zach Moss. Yo, I could not agree more. For a rookie, how much are we hearing about this? She said she needs to see finally, instead of hearing about it, if he was worth taking above his ADP in 2 of her leagues. What do you think?
Well, actually, I'm not even worried about Moss. If anybody should be worried, it should be Singletary, because this dude got drafted last year. Frank Gore taking him underneath his wing, trying to introduce him to Adrian Peterson and all these guys, and he's still trying to fumble the job away. Like, Moss, you just keep doing what you're doing, but Singletary, you better get your issue before you end up on the bench.
He got a little too much moisture on his hands, maybe. He needs to dry those up. Last one comes from @Soccernomics9. He says he's tired of hearing about Dak, and he's a Cowboys fan.
I couldn't. Who we talking about, Lizzie?
Dak.
Oh, Dak. Well, Dak is playing for the most valuable franchise in the world, not just Dallas or the state of Texas, but the world. And Jerry Jones won't pay that man. Like, that's like having a NASCAR, but you want to skimp on your driver. Hey, if you have somebody driving the most expensive car on the track, you better go ahead and pay the man that's whipping that thing.
I hear that.
And I guess
I hear
after that, our thirst has been quenched. Carry on.
That was a Crown Royal water break. Moderate your drinking on game day. Stay hydrated and stay royal.
Fantasy face-off. The concept here is very simple. Tank and I are each debating man, love your wardrobe choice this week, by the way, Tank. That's a good-looking shirt. We're each debating two players close in the fantasy ranks, and we each get 20 seconds to state our case. We're going to start with Cam Newton against your guy, Jimmy Garoppolo, who's been propped up by George Kittle his entire career. Go. Make your case for Garoppolo.
Well, Arizona gave up the most fantasy points to fantasy quarterbacks and tight ends. Now, we know that George Kittle is arguably the best fantasy tight end in the league, and he came from the second best college for tight ends, Iowa versus Stanford. So I'm expecting Jimmy G to go off. I mean, he had 2 of his best 3 games against Arizona, so plug Jimmy G in. He's going to do it for you today.
All due respect to Kobe Fleener University, no, Iowa is tight end U. I'm going to take Cam Newton here. I can't wait to start him right out of the gates with the Patriots. I think he's just a great fit there. It's just been like one love letter after another between him and Belichick during the offseason. Can't wait to see what that team has in store. You got to think that Josh McDaniels has some of those old Tim Tebow plays that he can dust off for Cam. Cam probably going to be the primary goal line runner. I'm expecting at least 1 rushing score this week. Okay, now we're going to look at a couple of rookie running backs, and I'll lead us off here. We're talking Zach Moss versus Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to start with Zach Moss. Tank, I feel like you made a pretty good case for me when discussing Devin Singletary. Singletary has those ball security issues. Moss, just a perfect complementary player for this backfield. He's a super efficient receiver. He was terrific in that role in college, and he's got that goal line size. So I expect him to get a ton of touches in goal-to-go situations. Last year, Frank Gore had 18 carries inside the 10-yard line. Those are going to Moss.
Yeah, and I feel like I helped you out a little bit, but the Jags gave up the second most fantasy points to running backs last year. And Jonathan Taylor has the perfect setup. Now, we hear that he's supposed to only spell Marlon Mack so he'll be fresh for the 4th quarter, but I believe that there's enough meat on the bone for Jonathan Taylor to get off, because I look at him as like Saquon Barkley on the rocks. A little bit watered down, but hey, if you give him enough work, he'll still get you drunk.
Okay, so you took the backup. I took the guy with a defined role. Fine, whatever. Last face-off is going to be Latavius Murray. I'm going to go with the veteran. You are going to go with also a veteran, Chris Thompson of Jacksonville. Let's hear it.
I mean, we already talked about how bad that Jags run defense is. So that means that Jacksonville is going to probably be playing in a negative script from an offensive standpoint, which means that Jay Gruden's going to get the throw to his favorite guy from Washington, Chris Thompson, out of the backfield. He'll probably get peppered with targets. And let's look at Latavius Murray. Dog, he's going against the Bucs, who are #1 against the run. Alvin Kamara all day out the backfield.
Yeah, I got to say, I would probably go Chris Thompson in full PPR, but in any other format, I want the guy who's going to get the goal line touches. That is Latavius Murray. Latavius last year, 14 carries inside the 10-yard line. That was one of the highest totals in the league. He's tied to an offense that is going to score 30-plus points per week. Give me Latavius here. It's close, but I expect him to see something like a dozen touches. Really good chance to find the end zone. Pretty.
All right, it's time to answer some flex questions from the people on social media, Liz. Let's start with our guy here, Johnny5. He asked, we got to pick two here. Amari Cooper, Deshaun Jackson, who you hyped up earlier, the ever-mentioned Boston Scott, or Marvin Jones in a standard league. What say you here?
Oh, standard meaning no PPR, I'm assuming, rather than a half point, which is the Yahoo standard. Amari Cooper is not fully healthy, but Vegas does have the over-under on that game at, I believe, 51.5. So to me, it is between Amari Cooper, Deshaun Jackson, and Boston Scott. I think I am going to go, because it is standard, with Boston Scott and Amari Cooper, though I like Deshaun Jackson, but I just think I'm going to be pretty floor here and say Scott for the touchdown appeal and Amari Cooper because he is the one, even if he's a little banged up. What about you?
Yeah, all four really appealing options, but I think you got to roll Scott out there as a potential 18-touch guy in this game in a pretty decent spot. And I love all the Deshaun Jackson analysis I've heard from you and many others in the industry, but I agree, you're just going to hate yourself in week one if you don't play Amari Cooper and he goes off against the Rams. So just make yourself feel better and go for it there. Next question. This one comes in from Joseph Navarro. Need a wide receiver 2 and a flex. We've got a lot of guys I really like here. Michael Gallup, Terry McLaurin, Calvin Ridley, and Marvin Jones in a half-point PPR. And by the way, just for clarity, they went up against CEH, so they're already in the hole. I'm going to go with McLaurin and Calvin Ridley. Like Gallup's matchup against the Rams in a high-scoring game, but I think McLaurin here is the favorite of these four to go for the most targets. And Calvin Ridley also in an attractive spot against the Seattle Seahawks in a high-scoring game. A lot of good options here, hard to go wrong, but Liz, are you with me or are you going a different direction?
I am with you. Gallup is very enticing because, like we talked about, Amari Cooper is not 100% healthy, big surprise, and I do think that'll benefit him. Also, coverage is going to benefit him, but week one, McLaurin is going to be a stud. He's a reception-perception guy, so I like him, and you can't sit Ridley, especially in this matchup.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm with you. Marvin Jones, by the way, good option too. We've gone against him in several spots, but without Galladay, that's another one. All right, tweet number 3. This is another half PPR league from Renner74. We've got Henry Ruggs, Jalen Reagor, or Deontay Johnson. Which way you going here with just one to pick?
Ooh, well, Deontay Johnson had a little bit of a soft tissue issue. Jalen Reagor, rookie, is going to see the field. He had a very quick comeback from that injury in the offseason. And Henry Ruggs is a speedster, but give me Deontay Johnson. I'm going to go with, even though he is not a totally veteran player, he is not a rookie. I like his spot. And also the Giants, my goodness, that matchup could not be better. I think Big Ben's healthy too. What about you?
Man, how good does it feel to be able to say soft tissue issue here in week one of the 2020 NFL season? I'm with you on Deontay Johnson. Really like that matchup against the Giants secondary. Henry Ruggs, he's going to get outshined by your guy Bryan Edwards against the Panthers. Good matchup, but give me a break. I am going with Deontay Johnson with conviction in this spot. All right, last tweet from Tommy D. He has to choose between Ty Montgomery. Is that Ty Montgomery?
Wow.
Or is this really work? No, probably David Montgomery. I'm just kidding. David Montgomery, Kareem Hunt, and the Jags' new guy, James Robinson. He's starting Anthony Miller with Kenny Galladay hurt. With a lot of information here, full PPR. I'm going to go with Robinson. I know Kareem Hunt has a pretty good, I know that Kareem Hunt has a pretty good receiving role. I think he's probably the safer guy, but Robinson, I think, could get 20 touches in this spot. And I don't expect the Jags just get rolled over by the Colts. I think that could be a pretty decent back and forth game. So I think the guy that is in line to probably lead the backfield in touches, I'm going to go with him and just see what you got here.
I understand that analysis. I think it is a little bit safer. I would like to see Kareem Hunt because I cannot shake how effective he was, not just through the air, but also in the red area of the field when he returned to the team in comparison to Nick Chubb. The matchup is not great, but from week 10 on, he really crushed in the red area. So I actually would say I'd lean towards Kareem Hunt in this one.
Hard to go against you there on that one, Liz. All right, now we're going to go over to some player props where I'm sure everyone will be talking about Ty Montgomery as a big over-under candidate.
Not sure I saw any Ty Montgomery player props this week. We are each going to talk about our favorite prop available at BetMGM. I'm going to get us started here with a Sam Darnold prop. 223.5 passing yards for Sam Darnold against his Buffalo defense. Hell no. No, that's not happening. Give me the under here all day. He had 2 cracks at Buffalo last season, didn't even reach 200 passing yards in any game. His receiving core, not substantially different. Sure, I'm on board with Jamison Crowder getting 20 targets for like 62 yards, but there's no path to 223 or 224 here. Buffalo only allowed about 195 per week last year, so very much on the under in this one. Hank, what do you like?
Man, we've been talking about this guy a lot already, but I like Josh Jacobs, 77.5 rush yards versus Carolina. Dog, you know I'm definitely going over. Like, this dude may have that in the first half. Carolina was giving up 143.5 yards per game in 2019, and now there's no Luke Kuechly. There's no Gerald McCoy. But then you're going to start a whole bunch of rookies and think that's going to be all right? Right. Now, I don't like making bets unless it's a sure thing. And this is LeBron James coming down the lane, and the only thing standing in his way is Andy Barron with some Patrick Ewing knee braces on. Slam dunk of a bet.
You don't think I could tie up LeBron? I think I could tie up LeBron. That is a great call. Obviously, Jacob's going to go off today. Minty, you're the betting professional. Who do you like?
I love Lamar Jackson over 61.5 rushing yards, -112. I mean, that's easy. That's a no-brainer. 61.5 rushing yards is nothing. In 2019, he rushed for over 62 yards in 11 games. 2 of those games were against the Browns. I know the Browns defense is a little beefier this season, but Lamar's going to do Lamar things, and he's going to fly over that 62 rushing yards real quick.
Oh, that feels like a really good call. Folks, if you feel like taking a chance on any of these player props, sign up today at betmgm.com/Yahoo. New users in New Jersey, Colorado, Indiana, or West Virginia can get a $25 bonus when they create a BetMGM account. No deposit required. And if that's not enough, new users will also receive a 100% match up to $1,000 when you make your first deposit. Must be over 21 in terms of apply.
Every Sunday night, I file a weekly recap column where I tell you about the 5 things I care about and the 5 things I don't care about from the Sunday slate of that specific week. Now, obviously, we're talking about what we care and do not care about heading into week 1. And I'll tell you what, everybody has been talking about it, and I get it. The regression coming to the Tennessee Titans passing game, and especially the regression coming to the play-action passing game. But I do not care about that in week 1. Let's just file some facts here. The Titans last year were awesome on play action. They led the NFL with Ryan Tannehill under center with 15.2 yards per attempt on play action throws. Obviously, the primary recipient of that was Tennessee Titans wide receiver A.J. Brown with 436 yards on play action, by far leading all pass catches in the NFL. Those numbers are not going to repeat themselves, but I don't care about that here in week 1 because I love the Titans matchup, especially A.J. Brown, going against a corner last year in A.J. Boye, who he dog-walked all over the field when he was playing with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I expect this team to really get off to a hot start here, especially with no Von Miller on the other side. You're rolling out Ryan Tannehill as a QB2 super flex type of guy, maybe even a streamer if you need it, and you're starting A.J. Brown if you need a volatile, high-ceiling wide receiver with confidence. And lastly, you need a tight end streamer. I like Jonnu Smith as a guy to really get going in this matchup too. Denver always struggles to cover the middle of the field against the tight end position. So get these guys in your lineup. And yes, at some point we're going to be talking about, man, the Titans aren't as good on those play action passes, but I don't think we're going to start talking about it here in the season opener for this particular team. Now, time for another break here on Fantasy Football Live. When we come back, we're going to see which players are trending. And of course, we're going to check in with the honorable judge, Andy Behrens. You're not going to want to miss that.
So close. Classic run by the rookie. One-on-one. All right, 3rd and 10. Here we go.
stay hydrated and stay royal. Take a water break and moderate your drinking on game day.
Welcome to Dunk Bait, where we talk mostly basketball.
Start one, bench one, cut two.
Let's get real here.
The message is equality. Some guys want to play, some guys don't.
I'm a Zion fan, and I think he's phenomenal.
I'm Jethro Jenkins.
King Josiah 54.
I'm Zach Schwartz.
Captain, I hate your pick.
That's all right, man. I hate your pick.
Guys, enough. Welcome to Mad Bets, the Yahoo Sports daily betting show. You can find us on our Twitter page at Yahoo Sportsbook or on the Yahoo Sports app.
Look, if you're betting to get rich, you might as well play the lottery.
All right, Jared.
Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football Live is presented by Crown Royal and by EA Sports Madden NFL 21.
Thanks for coming back to Season 15 of Fantasy Football Live. While you were gone, we were checking our phones because we are always keeping an eye on the social conversation, and it looks like the player that is trending the most is LeBron James. I know, wrong sport, but apparently LeBron tweeted at the Browns. He said, waking up excited as heck for NFL Football Sunday Week 1. All day long I'll be watching Let's Go Browns, Dog Pound. Tank, this is an interesting topic because we've already gotten questions about Kareem Hunt and how he could potentially eat into Nick Chubb's volume. Plus the matchup, not great. Though if we remember, the time that the Browns did beat the Ravens last season, it was when Nick Chubb was able to get going. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Actually, I'm surprised that LeBron is tweeting at the Browns and not the Cowboys. It seems like every time I see him, he has the Cowboys hat on. But as far as the Browns, I mean, they really need to get their act together. I mean, they came into the season last year with all these expectations, didn't live up to it. And the only thing that we've been hearing a lot about lately is OBJ liking a lot of something that I currently have on my chest, and that's Andy Barron's face. You can put two and two together. So I'm expecting Lamar Jackson and those Ravens to go off today. So I'm not expecting a whole lot from the Browns, but prove me wrong.
All right, Matt, so let's talk about those Ravens. I don't know who doesn't love Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, but there have been a lot of, from a fantasy perspective, questions about J.K. Dobbins, this standout rookie who had an excellent camp, also graded out as a really good pass protector, which is obviously something that rookie running backs struggle with in their first season, and whether or not, he'd negatively affect ultimate hype man Mark Ingram in his production/volume.
For one, I do just want to say thanks to LeBron for keeping it family friendly. Excited as heck. Now I know you're really fired up, my guy. No, look, here's the deal with this Ravens backfield. My analysis pretty much all off season has been the same. If you need early points, I think Mark Ingram is the way to go because we've all talked about continuity, consistency with personnel. I think Ingram is going to be the guy to lead this team in carries at least for the first 4 weeks. Definitely here in week 1, so I think he's a pretty safe play. But I think J.K. Dobbins, by the time we get to November, December, I think he's really going to make it hard for this team to not throw him on the field. And of course, we can't talk Ravens here without me just throwing a little bit of Marquise Brown hype onto the fire here. The Browns have injuries all over the secondary. I know their best cornerback, Denzel Ward, is still going to be available, but I think Hollywood is going to toast people here in week 1. You're going to be excited you drafted this guy here in week 1.
Oh, I love that analysis. Also know that the Ravens hold a special place in your heart, your mom or grandma's favorite team. So maybe if, Bev starts tweeting, we'll have to pull up something she says. So we'll continue to keep an eye on.
Don't count on that one.
We'll keep an eye on Matt's mom's social media activity and keep you up to date on all the social media buzz. But now it's the return of the Honorable Judge Barons. After a less than traditional offseason, Judge Andy is back to solve your virtual game disputes in the return of Fantasy Court.
Yeah, there's no higher fantasy court to which you can possibly appeal. By the way, I'm also going to fine Hank Williams 1 game check for disrespecting the commemorative Andy Barron's Championship t-shirt. That wasn't cool. But I have to take a question on a very important issue today, and it is from Chad Kruger, who asks, what's your position on trade vetoes? I think he knows what my position is. Should they exist or no? We had a spirited debate in our group message about this morning and need a third party to weigh in. My position on trade vetoes is simple, and that is they are an abomination. They are just about the worst thing about fantasy leagues. Listen, this whole thing is supposed to be fun. Fantasy sports, fun. And if you want to identify one thing that sucks all the fun out of it, it is a league vote trade veto, because nobody ever uses them for their intended purpose. Listen, they should be used in very limited amounts. The only reason to ever use a trade veto is because you suspect collusion in your league. Your commissioner can do that. You want a tyrant of a commissioner who just steps in, and if something is obviously imbalanced and unfair, maybe the commissioner can get involved. But league vote trade vetoes are the absolute worst because nobody ever votes for them for the right reason. People just vote their self-interest. They just don't want other teams to improve, so they kill trades time after time after time. It is the absolute worst setting in fantasy. And think about 2020. Think about how the league itself has changed the practice squad rules, because this is not going to be a normal season. We're going to have some game days when we need to make transactions fast to fill out rosters. Players are going to be last-minute inactives. You're going to want to make trades late in the game. Given that that's the situation, we don't need impediments to that. We don't want any impediments to transactions, especially this season, or really in any season. So my position on league vote trade vetoes is that they are the absolute worst. We need to end them. End them. No veto in your league.
Andy Barron's new wig, who dis? My goodness, if the last second play or a missed kick costs you your matchup this week, tell us about it. Send a video to @Yahoo Fantasy using the hashtag FFLBadBeats, and Andy will try to sympathize with you, hopefully, like I said, without that wig. My gosh. Channeling your best King George from Hamilton. Back into over-unders as we inch closer to kickoff in week 1. Our next line is Cowboys rookie wideout CeeDee Lamb over/under 9.9 fantasy points in his NFL debut against the Rams. I don't like that I have to go first in this one because I really love this player. An exceptional talent. Actually reminds me a lot of Chris Godwin, but the same thing that prevented Godwin from breaking out in his rookie season is what I think might keep Lamb quiet, at least for the first couple games of 2020, and that is volume. You also have Amari Cooper here. You also have Michael Gallup, and I said it earlier, right? The line on this game is 51.5. I'm gonna take the under on that because as much as we are excited about Kellen Moore and the commitment to the pass in Dallas, Zeke Elliott is still very much a part of this offense. I don't see Lamb going over 5 for 75. Forced to say under, wouldn't mind being wrong. Matt.
I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over on this one. Look, it's not asking too much. I mean, 9.9 points, that's 5 catches for 74 yards. I think he could either get more than the yardage or more than the catches. I think this guy's going to be involved right away. He's been as advertised as in camp. He's been a stud prospect for since he's pretty much broken out at Oklahoma. This guy can do it all, and I think he's going to play a big role here in week 1 because you mentioned it, Liz. Amari Cooper's there, but he's also going to draw the toughest matchup. He's the guy who is a little bit more volatile in this passing game. Love all of the options, but I think Lamb has a big game, and I'm going to take the over on that total. I think both of these offenses are going to be progressive, forward-thinking here this year. I love this game to get high scoring.
And Minty, close us out.
All right, I'm with you, Liz. Actually, I like the under here. We know CeeDee Lamb is fast. He runs routes efficiently. He's tough to take down. But again, like you mentioned, Dak has Michael Gallup. He has Amari Cooper. And Zeke is going to get mad if he doesn't get fed the ball a lot. So the under is the play here, as I think we'll see CeeDee Lamb on the field, but not make any significant plays.
All right, we're talking about 3 players here who we expect to be off their game, who are heavily rostered, almost universally rostered in Yahoo leagues. I'm going to get us started with somebody that we've mentioned a few times already on the show, and that is Odell Beckham. He's had a week. He's been trending for most of the wrong reasons. Odell's got a terrible spot here in Week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens defense only allowed 3 wide receivers last season to go over 100 receiving yards. Odell himself only had 64 receiving yards against this team in 2 games. You know about the corners for the Ravens. It's Humphrey, it's Peters. There's just no place for a receiver to hide. We think the Jarvis Landry is going to be a bit limited this week. That could only bring additional attention to Beckham. I think he's a nice rebound candidate for the year, but I don't like him this week, not in the opener. Matt, who else is going to be off their game?
Yeah, I'll take another high-profile receiver, and I'm not one of the guys that's really concerned about DeAndre Hopkins over the course of the year. I don't think he's going to be a terrible bust on your fantasy team, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has a slower debut with the Arizona Cardinals here in Week 1. Number one, obviously we know the San Francisco 49ers defense is pretty tough. That's not going to be great sledding for your first test on a new team, and that's key. Wide receivers changing teams historically see their production drop off. That could happen to Hopkins this year, but especially here in Week 1, let's not forget, in an already truncated offseason, Nuke spent a lot of time away from practice in training camp. In the very few limited reps that he could have had to get on the same page with Kyler Murray, he was away from practice. And obviously we know he got paid. Good for him. That's exactly what we want to see. Hopkins is one of the best talents at wide receiver, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes under your expectations here in Week 1. I don't know if you have the stomach to bench him, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if he gives you more of a floor outing in this.
That feels like a good call. I wish it didn't. Tank, who else is going to disappoint us this week?
Man, Le'Veon Bell. I mean, have we heard one piece of good news about Le'Veon Bell and Adam Gase this entire offseason? Like, it seems like these dudes been at each other's necks like married couples working at home for the first time during this Rona area. So, and to make matters worse, Adam Gase has his favorite side piece with him in New York, Frank Gore. We saw what he did with Kenyon Drake, and so he's going to probably end up doing that with Le'Veon again. And on top of that, he's going against a Buffalo run defense that's just been pounding people against the run. And so I don't see any room for Le'Veon to wiggle. So I'm actually more interested in his music career than his football career, at least today.
All right, that's a look at who we don't like this week. Let's make the people a little money. Let's kick it to Minty for a little mad bets.
Alrighty, guys, these are my picks for NFL Week 1. Let's start off with the afternoon game. The Arizona Cardinals plus 6.5 against San Francisco. I like the Cardinals here plus 6.5 and sprinkle a little on the money line at plus 250. Kyler Murray has his first year down. He's got a couple weapons to work alongside with, especially DeAndre Hopkins. I know you guys mentioned that earlier. The Cardinals are 5-0-1 against the spread. Their last 6 meetings against the Niners as underdogs. Also, believe it or not, the Cardinals are 8-2 straight up against the 49ers as well. So sprinkle a little on the money line. Next up, the Sunday night game is going to be Dallas at the LA Rams. Dallas is a road favorite here, and they're a road favorite for a reason, because the Rams, although they do have one of the best defensive players in Aaron Donald, their defense is still a little iffy. They struggled offensively last season, and I expect them to struggle offensively this season as well. Dallas is 4-1 straight up and against the spread against LA, and the Rams are 0-7-1 against the spread as home underdogs. And for Monday, we've got 2 games here. The Steelers and the Giants. The Steelers are a favorite of 6 points. The total is set at 45.5. I actually really like the under here. I'm not going to take sides. Just going to spit out some trends here. The Steelers, just playing on the road since 2014, are 81.4% to the under. That means they've hit the under 81.4% of the time when they're on the road. And to give you a trend that applies specifically to this situation, the Steelers, as a road favorite of 3.5 or more points, which they are 119-1 over under, which means they've only hit the over 1 time in 21 games as a road favorite of 3.5 or more points. So the under here is what I like. I would I would bet it down to 44.5. I think it'll get there, but no lower than that. And then lastly, we've got the Denver Broncos hosting the Tennessee Titans as the Monday Night Football game. The Broncos are a home dog of 3 points, and I really like the Broncos in this spot here because I think everyone's looking at Tennessee for what they did in the second half of their last season. They beat the Chiefs in the first round, they beat the Ravens, and they beat the Patriots, but we're forgetting that Denver is a really, really hard stadium to play at just due to the altitude. So I think the Titans are going to get pretty tired here, so I like Denver catching 3 points. Guys, do not forget to check out Mad Bets as we give out our NFL picks every single week. Check it out on the Yahoo Sports app or on Twitter at Yahoo Sportsbook, and also some guest appearances by some of your favorite Yahoo fantasy analysts.
All right, Liz, it's time to do our absolutely favorite thing on this show, which is to jump into the chat room, weed through the lunatics, and help out the people that think they're just screaming into the void and we're not paying attention to them. Wrong. We are. I've got the chat room pulled up right here, and I want to get to this pressing question from Zach Zilch. Hopefully you don't put up Zilch in your fantasy lineup. Le'Veon Bell or Jonathan Taylor in a half-point PPR? Now, what are we doing here? Because we can project Le'Veon Bell for more touches, right? But we can also project him for more fights with his head coach, more drama on the sidelines, whatever. Which way are you going here, Liz?
You know, hope springs eternal, and sometimes though you gotta end something. And so I'm gonna give the edge to the rookie. I know that we're talking about whether or not it's he or Marlon Mack, the 60-40 split to begin with. And obviously Le'Veon Bell is more efficient as a pass catcher. That's something that Jonathan Taylor has very little experience at. But I am going to lean into the hype and say Taylor, if for no other reason than the matchup that Le'Veon Bell has drawn against Buffalo.
Liz, correct analysis. You've got that one right. And I love to see that the people have remembered after all this time. Throw that emojis in the chat room and you've got my attention. Brian Martinez from Facebook has my attention with this one, with some beer and some football, 2 things I love. And I love this running back debate in a PPR league between Melvin Gordon or Boston Scott. I'm going to go with Boston Scott here. I know you drafted Melvin Gordon pretty high, but this is the time to throw out Scott, a guy who is a proven pass catcher, and we really don't know what the split is going to look like between Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay. It apparently is going to be a 50-50 backfield. I wouldn't be surprised if Scott way out touches Melvin Gordon here in week 1. Liz, are you with me on that call or not?
You know what? I am not with you. Although the Washington football team has a D-line that is not proven, it is full of potential. And Boston Scott, when he was given the opportunity at the end of last season, certainly showed out. However, with Cortland Sutton being banged up and with Jarrell Casey no longer being on the Titans, but instead on the Broncos, let's call this the Jarrell Casey revenge game, in fact, because it's probably one of the most intriguing pieces about it. I'm going to lean towards Gordon. The altitude he had trouble adjusting to. Phillip Lindsay, obviously a native, won't have that issue, but I think Gordon is going to see more pass attempts than we maybe expected with Sutton banged up. So I'm going to lean towards Gordon on this one, actually.
I definitely could see that with having a bit more receiving work. Well, people, thank you for jumping in the chat room. Remember to check out our halftime show wherever you're watching this program, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, whatever. We don't care. Wherever you're tuning in right now, Liz and I are going to be back during the early game portion halftime. So tune in. We'll be sure to address all of your tilting, all of your guilting, you know, whatever's going on with your lineup. We're going to talk about it. You can talk to us, and we're going to talk back at you.
It is time to take a break here on Fantasy Football Live, but don't forget, Yahoo was rated the best fantasy sports app by the Fantasy Sports Gaming Association in 2019. So check out this week's top fantasy pickups and award-winning insight on the Yahoo Fantasy app today. You can also watch the show here, Matt. We'll be right back.
The NFL is back, and you could be watching free live football on your phone. Just download the app, allow your location, and get live local and primetime games Thursdays, Sundays, and Mondays. Your favorite teams, all the highlights. With the Yahoo Sports app, you get free live football.
Have you always wanted to watch sports on your cell phone? Highlights. Headlines. You already got it all, records and everything.
No, I gotta win at least 7. Tom has 6.
And guest stars.
You watching The Rush.
Yahoo has you covered every day.
The new normal? We hear that a lot now. As we look for real news to make sense of this new normal, we realize knowledge is more than power. It's an antidote to uncertainty. Because with the right information, the new normal doesn't need to just be uncertain. It can be a chance to define what's next. Stay informed with Yahoo News.
Our final over-under is going to focus on a guy that we haven't seen in a while. A year ago, 2018, this man averaged 320 passing yards per game. So this is a layup for him. This is a layup for Roethlisberger. He's got that full complement of receivers. He's got Deontay Johnson, who we love. He's got Juju, who we love. He's got James Conner out of the backfield. They add Eric Ebron. He's facing a Giants defense that last year allowed the 4th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. I think he gets this easy. It's a clear over for me. Matt, what say you?
Yeah, that Giants defense is a mess. They could be one of the 5 worst in the NFL, even though they just signed Logan Ryan. I don't care. Give me the over on this number. You mentioned it, Andy. He put up a ton of passing yards last we saw him. That's because the Steelers, whenever Roethlisberger's on the field, they're consistently top 5 in passing rate in neutral game scripts. That means even when they're trailing, honestly. I mean, even when they're ahead, they're throwing the ball with Ben Roethlisberger. They've got an embarrassment of riches at the skill position. Deontay Johnson, Juju, like you mentioned, even James Washington, and hey, Eric Ebron is like still kind of a thing. So yeah, give me the over easy on this one.
Hank, come on, sweep it. Let's sweep.
Man, I don't know what all this easy talking about. I'm going under, man. Like, Ben Roethlisberger just said that he was shaking like a leaf because he hadn't played in so long. Like, we know he's coming off that injured arm, and we still don't know if that Ben Roethlisberger on the road is still a thing, too. Now, I'm not expecting him to, like, throw a flop or anything like that. I think he may throw for 3 tubs. I just don't think that he's going to throw for over 299.5 yards. So he's going to ball out, but he's going to be under on the yardage. Ah, yes, and it's finally time. What it do, baby? It's your favorite baller on the budget, coming with my value picks for the DFS game. Now, at quarterback, I'm rolling with my man, Tyrod Taylor at $25. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals gave up the most rushing yards in the league last year, but wait, there's more. They also gave up the most attempts and rushing yards to quarterbacks as well. And so my man Tyrod is sitting at $25, and there's no Geno Atkins. Come on, man. Come with it now. Now at running back, I'm going with Marlon Mack. Now the Jags gave up the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs last year, and we already heard what the coaching staff said. They said that they drafted Jonathan Taylor to spell Marlon Mack, so he's fresh in the 4th quarter. And so you don't think that Marlon Mack at $17 is going to ball out and totally surpass value in the DFS game? Come on now, that's easy money right there. Now, wide receiver, I'm going with my man Robert Woods because they're going against the Dallas Cowboys. They're home dogs in the Sunday night game with the highest over-under point total of the week. Now, we don't have to worry about Brandon Cooks anymore. Yes, Cooper Kupp's going to get his targets, but I think Robert Woods in the track meet is definitely going to eat and justify that $16 price tag. And that tight end, I'm going with TJ Hockenson. We already heard my man Harmon talk about him before. My man Holiday Galladay is out the game. All the Detroit running backs are either banged up or need to hang it up now. AD is my boy, but he like the Frederick Douglass of running back, so it's about time for him to go on out the pasture. And so without having Galladay in store, I expect my man Hockenson to get all the targets in the red zone, so therefore TJ Hawk is going to be the man to play this week. And so the T is for the money, and the money is something that you may not have unless you listen to my damn picks. So go ahead and get them in your lineup and make it rain for y'all, baby. Yeah, shout out to my boy.
The FF Guru Challenge is back again this year, and so is AD, apparently. And just a friendly reminder of who won it all last year. Here we go. Andy, you don't actually think you can repeat, do you?
What a moment that was. Let's just soak it in for a second. Yes, I think I can repeat. As intimidated as I am by Tank's Tyrod-led lineup, I'm designing next year's t-shirt already. I feel pretty good about this thing.
Can I actually get one this year? I didn't get one last year.
Oh, it's coming your way. Coming your way.
There is still time for us all to get Andy's personalized t-shirts and for you to get in on the action. The new Yahoo Cup BetMGM Daily Contest. Enter every week for a chance at $75,000 in total prizes, and the top 25 lineups each week will be entered into the Yahoo Cup BetMGM Final, where you could win free rooms from MGM Resorts or a $20,000 Vegas getaway. Head to yahoo.com/dailyfantasy to join.
New this season on FFL, we will be catching up with other members of the fantasy community during the week to take a deep dive into their area of expertise or just to talk about all things football. This week, we are going to be kicking things off with TJ Hernandez. He is the DFS director at 4for4.com. TJ wears the iconic red tracksuit made popular by the great Josh Moore. TJ, how you doing?
Doing good. Excited for week one. We got one game under our belt, so I'm ready for the next 15 this week.
Let me start just basically, I think a lot of people who watch this show are pretty committed season-long fantasy players, but maybe they only occasionally dip a toe into DFS and into daily games. Where do you generally advise people to get started if they're interested but haven't played a lot of DFS?
Sure. Before people even set lineups, I think the most important thing to do is understand bankroll management, understand what games are the most profitable, where you could find an edge, and just what games fit you. I mean, there's games that are beginner, smaller type contests. After that, understanding how DFS lineups are built, how variance is built into a lineup, which positions you want to be allocating salary to, and that's going to be a really good start for you.
So I think people understand that in DFS, some of the same principles apply that we use in season long, right? We're looking for great players with great matchups. Those are kind of the basics, but obviously that alone isn't necessarily going to take down a prize in one of these big sprawling contests, right, where we're gunning for $1 zillion or something like that. So what are some of your guiding principles in contests like that?
Yeah, if you're playing bigger contests or even just any tournament, if you're playing a tournament with 500 people instead of 50,000 people, there's a couple things that we want to be looking for. Obviously, we're looking for upside. You need to be able to top hundreds, if not thousands of people in a contest. So we want high variance in our rosters. And a lot of times that upside comes through a similar principle is finding correlation in our lineup. So if an offense has a quarterback and a wide receiver that typically connect a lot, that's going to increase the variance of your lineups. And finally, being unique. If you're playing all of the same players that everybody else is, you're not going to be able to lap the field like you need to take down a tournament. Building a roster that other people aren't going to have in that game. Maybe rostering multiple players in that game or multiple players from both teams.
Who are some of the guys that you have the highest exposure to in week one?
Well, we're always going to be looking at Lamar Jackson and CMC, right? So we'll just do a caveat that if you can afford those guys, we're going to roster them. But going beyond those two every single week, at the quarterback position, Josh Allen is a player that I've been touting all offseason, and he opens up week one in a fantastic spot. Jets got beat deep a lot last year, so I like him there a lot. I mentioned CMC, stay in that same game. Look at Josh Jacobs. Both of these defenses very poor in this game. Josh Jacobs, no Theo Riddick. They traded Lynn Bowden, so maybe he gets some of the receiving work, and I think the Raiders are just in a really good spot there. And then I'm just trying to pay up for the tight ends this week. Our big tight ends, Kittle, Andrews, Ertz, all in really fantastic spots. I'm trying to find a way to get Kittle's big salary into my lineup. Those were exciting games between the Cardinals and Niners last year, and I'm looking for a high-scoring one in that one with Kittle getting a lot of targets.
Yeah, Kittle is just about the best matchup of great player and super friendly defensive matchup. Obviously, The Cardinals just hemorrhaged points to the tight end position last year. This is good stuff, TJ. Thanks a lot. You can catch his work
at 4for4.com. You'll be reading them at Yahoo all season.
Thanks, Andy.
Always love seeing TJ, but now let's get back in on Twitter for some more viewer questions at the hashtag AskFFL. This first question comes from Kevin Q, and he wants to know, should I put Reagor or Edwards, 2 rookies, in as my flex? I am going to absolve myself from this question because I am too biased in favor of Edwards. But Andy, I will ask you, as more of a level-headed player, which of these 2 rookies you would flex?
You're kicking it to me because you know that I like Edwards as well. I'm gonna play him. Reagor, of course, somewhat heroically came back to practice. Gonna go this week. Edwards has just been, Derek Carr's been raving about him all off season. He's dropped the Michael Crabtree comp on him. He dropped a Devontae Adams comp on him. He's that one candidate who, as you and Matt, I know, have both discussed, strong candidate for like those back shoulder throws, red zone target. I think Edwards makes a lot of noise here this week immediately against a Carolina defense that isn't going to be able to resist much of anything.
Oh, I love that take. So much so that we don't need to hear from anybody else. But Matt, I will ask you this next question. It's from Candy Ellis, and she wants to know, with Galladay out now in standard, she needs a flex. AJ Green, Jerry Jeudy, remember Cortland Sutton banged up, Phillip Lindsay, or Emmanuel Sanders. What you got?
Man, you know, a couple people asked me about AJ Green too, and my typical analysis has been, you know, I want to take a wait and see approach on AJ Green. I think that he has, you know, we just really don't know what he looks like. It's been so long since we've seen him on a football field. Also, the matchup is not really great with some of those Chargers cornerbacks on the outside. So I'm going to stay away from Green here, and I'm going to be risky. I'm going to take the rookie wide receiver, Jerry Jeudy. Of course, it's his first game, whatever, but I love the target projection with Cortland Sutton banged up. Also, let's not forget, this is one of the most refined route runners we've ever seen coming into the NFL. The Titans cornerbacks, they can be beat deep. They can make some mistakes, and I think Jeudy is a guy, even though he's a first-year player, he can twist them around like a veteran out there. I'm going to go with Jeudy here.
I love that take. Definitely hitting the ceiling in week 1. The floor, I think, play would obviously be Emmanuel Sanders, but Jeudy is a hot take, and I'm with you on it. This third question I'm going to give to Minty. Corey asks, Patriots win total over or under 9.5 this season. Should I take the Dolphins to win outright today?
Ooh, well, first of all, I'm staying away from season win totals in NFL because of all the last minute COVID stuff. But also the Patriots are, have a lot of players that have opted out this season. It's really, really hard to tell. I wouldn't take the Dolphins outright, though. I know the odds are a little juicy at plus 265 or so. But I wouldn't sleep on Cam and Bill Belichick either. So I might take the Dolphins and the points. I think they're at plus 7 right now. Wouldn't take them outright. And I definitely would stay away from the season win total as well.
All right, that is very thoughtful analysis, Minty. Thank you. We've got to take another break here on FFL, but when we come back, Matt and I will go head-to-head, maybe even toe-to-toe, and debate some pass catchers in our next Fantasy Face-Off. Don't go away.
Name spokesplayer. Here to remind you about these boys' greatness because they too busy creating. That last 100 years was something, but now number 8 and friends about to put the whole world on notice. They games be nasty. Good gracious. Welcome to a whole new era.
Sometimes you need a friend.
Captain, I hate your pick.
That's all right, man. I hate your pick.
Guys, enough. Welcome to Mad Bets, the Yahoo Sports daily betting show. You can find us on our Twitter page at Yahoo Sportsbook or on the Yahoo Sports app.
Look, if you're betting to get rich, you might as well play the lottery.
All right, Jared.
Hi, I'm Hannah. Welcome to the bandwagon.
Every week, I'm going to be telling you which team you should root for right now.
This week, I'm bandwagoning the Twins.
The Yankees.
The Rays. Reasons to bandwagon the A's baseball's best 15 outfield assists. He dodged getting murdered and then did a push-up. Kevin Kiermaier has the bluest eyes in baseball. Let's be a fan, not a fan.
Yeah, meltdown.
Be careful, physics. I'm a fan. This happened to him. Not a fan of eating mayonnaise straight. Learn to beat the shift.
Oh, right. Thin Mints.
Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football Live is presented by Crown Royal and by EA Sports Madden NFL 21.
We are back here on Fantasy Football Live, almost ready to kick off a 9-game early slate here in Week 1. But let's check in on our own feeds and see what folks want to know. All right, I'm going to go first. This question is from Instagram. David Ottaviani Jr. Start 1 PPR, flex spot, Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson, Zach Moss, or John Brown. This is PPR. Again, it's a flex. You got 3 rookie theoretical running backs, although Antonio Gibson could be a wide receiver. I'm going with John Brown. I like it. I mean, we're going to talk about him a little bit later, maybe in full PPR, and in Buffalo that doesn't make a lot of sense, but I think he's the high floor player, or the high ceiling player, so I'm going to go with him. Andy, what about you? Who is sliding into your DMs?
Yeah, first of all, I got a message here from Release the Kraken telling me to ban the wig. Sir, we will never ban the wig. The wig is principle on the show. It will not happen. That will never go away. Jeff also dropping in to ask Jerry Jeudy, Chris Thompson, or Anthony Miller. I like Miller, but I'm going to go Jerry Jeudy here. I'm fully on board with everything that Matt Harmon said in the last segment. Jeudy is an absolute technician. We've got Cortland Sutton banged up right now. Not sure even if he's going to be able to go on Monday night. If he is, Jeudy is ready to go. Like, Jeudy is about as pro-ready as any wide receiver that we've seen come into this league in a long time. If you believe at all in Drew Lock, there's a clear path here for Jeudy to see something like 120, 130 targets this year. I think he can be sensational. I am playing him in Week 1.
Tank, I think you're sensational. Tell me what you have.
Hey, that's why you my girl, Lizzie. But I know another sensational girl is Terry, Bowbeer2 on Twitter from the gym. Like, she loves fantasy football and she loves great wine. And she was asking me, she had Kenny Galladay, he's out. Do I play Sterling Shepard, Deshaun Jackson, or John Brown? Now, we already talked about Smokey Brown having that really good matchup. No Jamal Adams in that New York Jets secondary. But I love the revenge narrative with Deshaun Jackson. No Alshon Jeffrey. You have some other guys that are up-and-comers on the other side, but I think Wentz is going to have his eyes on Deshaun Jackson to try to get that offense flying in Week 1. So, D-Jax, make sure you plug him in. He should ball today.
And Minty, who is adding you for some sports betting advice?
All right, so I got a question here. What is your best 3-team underdog parlay? Well, assuming that it's just against the spread, I like, just off the top of my head, Browns plus 7.5, Jets plus 6.5, and the Dolphins plus 7. By the way, the Yahoo Sportsbook just tweeted out that someone placed a $525,000 bet on the Patriots minus 7. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go the other way here.
Okay.
It wasn't me.
Big money. Yeah.
All right, Liz, like you said, we're going head-to-head here on a couple of guys that are close to each other in the rankings. Let's start off at the wide receiver position. The aforementioned John Brown, Tank just talked about him. Against Julian Edelman, which side are you taking here?
Well, Matt, I like you too much to make you advocate against one of your favorite players in the league. So I am going to take Julian Edelman, who isn't as boring as you think. After all, this is a dude who got rowdy on the top of a Ford Focus in the streets of Beverly Hills after partying with Danny Amendola and Paul Pierce at what was basically an upscale El Torito. He also had a career year last year with a busted shoulder, managed 100 catches and over 1,100 yards. He is a nice floor play. Let's ease into Week 1 a little bit here.
Well, Liz eased right over her 20 seconds, so I'm going to keep this simple on John Brown, why I'm taking this side of the coin. It's going to be tough to decide when to start these Bills passing game players, but they're facing the Jets this week. No Jamal Adams. I like John Brown. I like Josh Allen. I like Stephon Diggs. These vertical threats can really get going against the secondary. Like, who are some of these guys playing cornerback? Give me a break. I'm starting John Brown for the stealing here. All right, now let's move to the tight end position, and we're once again going with a intra-division sort of situation here. Hayden Hurst versus Rob Gronkowski. I'll lead it off and talk about Hayden Hurst. Look, I love this game. Falcons against the Seahawks, especially love the fact that it's in Atlanta. The Falcons are really going to get going as a passing offense, and that's going to have the Seahawks trailing as well. They're going to be throwing the ball out. They're going to be forced to throw. Hayden Hurst should run a ton of routes. I'm more confident this week in his opportunity against a defense that had some trouble stopping tight ends last year. Yeah, they traded for Jamal Adams, but still, like Hurst opportunity.
I like Hurst over the length of the season, but if you drafted Rob Gronkowski, week 1 is the time to use him, especially with Mike Evans not at 100% and given his history against Marshawn Lattimore, who has absolutely owned him. The Saints pass rush is solid. They're going to pressure Brady, and Brady, especially in week 1, is going to look to his most reliable and successful security blanket in Gronk. I'm predicting 2 spikes for the vet.
Hey, hard to argue with that, especially with Mike Evans banked up. Now let's do another wide receiver around here. 2 young guys on an upward trajectory. Terry McLaurin versus DJ Chark. Tell me why you like Chark a little bit more.
You know what? I have these guys very close in my rankings, and I like both these players a lot, but basically it comes down to the fact that Vegas has the over-under set at a higher number for the Jacksonville-Indianapolis game, and also I think DJ Chark has the better quarterback and the worst defense. I just think he's going to see more volume.
Yeah, you can't argue with that at all. Terry McLaurin, though, I think could be a legit superstar, a guy that I think is going to end up being one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And yeah, I mean, Dwayne Haskins, I think he's honestly just getting a bad rap at this point. The guy finished his rookie season strong after being really thrown to the Wolves way too early. Like, Jay Gruden clearly didn't like this guy, didn't want to play him, whatever. But Haskins finished strong. Last 3 games of the season, 67% completion rate, 5-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. I think it's good enough here in week 1. You chase the ceiling with McLaurin.
All right, make your pick time. We are going to read a handful of tweets here. Hopefully we can help you out with your fantasy conundrums. Let's start with Joseph. Joseph has a PPR question for us. He says he's got 2 flex spots between David Montgomery, N'Keal Harry, Henry Ruggs, fun rookie, or TJ Hawkinson, Iowa legend. I'm going to throw this one to Matt. Who do you like? We need 2 flexes.
Oh, geez, thanks. Really appreciate it. I'm hoping you're in a deeper league that you're already considering, like, do I have to start N'Keal Harry? I like TJ Hawkinson a lot. I think you go with him. And look, David Montgomery, I'm not super confident here. I think he's a little banged up, whatever, but he would be my second choice of the bunch. These 2 wide receivers really can't trust their target projection yet at this point.
Yeah, no, I like the call. Next question is coming to us from Question Everything. And Question Everything asks, James White, Kareem Hunt, Antonio Gibson, or Malcolm Brown? This is full PPR. We've got a couple of tasty PPR options here, actually. Tank, who are you going with?
Actually, I'm going with James White. I mean, it's hard to tell how the Patriots are going to look this year, but I read some of the practice notes, and they said that Cam Newton was peppering James White out the backfield one day. So obviously it's not that same chemistry that he had with Tom Brady, but I think Cam is going to lean on the running back, so he really can't depend on the tight end just yet. So James White's my choice.
Yeah, I'm going to co-sign that. James White probably in for a big week, especially in full PPR. That is where I would go. Our final question here comes to us from Logan. And Logan is asking, start to... Oh, man, Logan, you violated a cardinal rule here. The names are Boyd, Brown. We got a few of them. Could this be John Brown? Could this be Hollywood Brown? Ruggs or Devontae Parker? I will take this one because in my capacity as fantasy judge, I am fining you a game check as well for not specifying your Brown. Obviously, if this is A.J. Brown or Hollywood Brown, that's who I'm going with. And I am definitely going with Tyler Boyd. I think we're going to love this Joe Burrow-Tyler Boyd connection all year. Burrow, had some success at LSU with the slot receiver position. Justin Jefferson caught a zillion balls. I think Tyler Boyd is in for a great year. So almost regardless of your Brown, I'm going to go with him, and I'm going to go with Boyd.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. Let's switch gears to some last-minute sleepers. Each week, I'll give you a rundown of some unknowns who could really do some damage. This week, I have a couple of hidden gems, starting with James Robinson, who isn't that hidden anymore. In fact, when I first thought about him, he was only rostered in 30% of Yahoo leagues. That number has jumped to 53%, though he is still only $10 in our daily game. An undrafted free agent out of Illinois State. He's a no-nonsense power back, excellent vision, balance, tackle-breaking ability, and he's going to be the Jags' RB1 because both Raquel Armstead and Devine Ozigbo are out. I like his opportunity. He's a decent flex, could very well find the goal line. Next, Someone we haven't talked about, surprisingly, wide receiver Kendrick Bourne. He's only rostered in 10% of Yahoo leagues, and he is, $12 in our daily game. Listen, Deebo Samuel is out. Brandon Ayuk, not healthy. And Bourne has been on this roster for 2 16-game slates in back-to-back seasons. He has great rapport with Jimmy Garoppolo. And the last time he faced Arizona, twice last season, he scored in each of those efforts. I think volume, his rapport with Garoppolo, the continuity there, lead me to believe that he could find the end zone again, even if it's not a ton of volume. Those are 2 of my fantasy damage sleepers. And now it's time to take our final break here on FFL. We'll get to more roster questions when we come back.
Another crown?
I just have a water this round, please.
You got it. Here's your water.
Thank you.
Stay hydrated and stay royal. Take a water break and moderate your drinking on game day.
Have you always wanted to watch sports on your cell phone? Highlights. Headlines. You already got it all, records and everything.
No, I gotta win at least 7. Tom has 6.
And guest stars.
You watching The Rush?
Yahoo has you covered every day.
It's your portfolio. It's your retirement. It's your money. Isn't it time you trade up? With Yahoo Finance Premium, you can trade up to tools that let you go beyond the fundamentals, to exclusive access to proprietary data and pattern recognition. With industry-leading insights and advanced charting, you can make the best moves for your money. Get started with your free trial today.
Yeah, we're just moments away from kickoff, y'all. So let's get to as many social media questions as we can. I'm going to start with this one. It is from Mike Mulraney. He wants to know, flex in a standard scoring league. Y'all, please, can you tell us if it's half point PPR or standard, like old school standard, because that would help. Landry, Preston Williams, or Kerryon Johnson. That Detroit backfield kind of a disaster right now. Who do we got on this one? Matt, why don't you tell us what you're thinking here?
I thought you said you were going to take this one. Don't give me the hard questions here. I guess with this group, I think I'm going to go with Preston Williams. It's a tough matchup, but a little worried about the fact that they think Landry's going to be limited coming off an offseason where he was banged up. Definitely do not trust that Detroit backfield at all. I think the Adrian Peterson signing says more about Kerryon Johnson than it does DeAndre Swift. So I think Preston Williams is your ceiling throw here, especially with Parker a little bit banged up as well. I'm not confident one bit, fella, but you're in a standard league. I assume you're chasing touchdowns. I think Williams has a decent odds at getting a touchdown in a negative game spread.
All right, well, thank you for helping me out there, Matt. I will make sure to take this next one. It's from Mr. Dodger 1966. Ooh, how about them Dodgers yesterday? What a way to give up a lead. Anyway, let's talk about Terry McLaurin or Michael Gallup, 2 players we like a lot. Here's the difference. One of them is the wide receiver 1. The other is the wide receiver 2. I agree with all of Matt's analysis earlier about Terry McLaurin being a stud in the making. I think you start him with confidence in week 1. And Minty, we're going to give you this next one, all right? Tweet number 3 here. Eric, a very interestingly spelled Eric, asks, Jets, Bills, over-under is at 39.5. What you think?
Oof, that's a really low total. The Bills last season went 4-12 over-under, so they hit the under quite a significant amount of times. But I don't believe that they won't be able to produce any points. I mean, especially with the Bills adding on Stephon Diggs and Zach Moss. I kind of lean the over here, but I'm not touching it. That is super low. Over, though.
All right, Tank, I'm going to give this one to you. It's from Ruben. Who should I start at flex? James Conner or Calvin Ridley? 2 pretty solid choices.
Oh, those are two solid choices. I always like to lean running back in the flex. I've already talked about Ben Roethlisberger, who I think will have a really good game, a really good matchup against that, New York Giants pass defense. But I think that they'll lean on James Conner. They say that he's going to be the workhorse back in that backfield, no committee. So I like James Conner, even though I expect really to ball out, and I got him in several season-long lineups.
Oh, Tank, because we are in week 1 and maybe have some new viewers, you want to tell everyone why you lean towards a running back in the flex?
I mean, it's all about volume. I mean, that's the key to fantasy football. You want to know where the volume's coming at. And so running backs are usually going to touch the ball a little bit more, especially when you have an offense like Pittsburgh that likes to lean on the run, especially when you have a quarterback that's coming off an injury. We know Julio Jones is going to be highly targeted in Atlanta. They also have some weapons in Hayden Hurst, Calvin Ridley. So if you can kind of focus your focus on who's going to touch the ball the most, more than likely it's going to be a running back in this situation. So that's why I lean Conner.
Thank you, Tank. All right, Judge Andy. Can you rule on this one? It'll be our final question before we kick off Sunday, week 1. Aaron asks, John Brown, see, he did the first name, so you already like him, or Manny Sanders for full PPR?
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Appreciate you for the first name there. I like John Brown a lot, but I'm going to go Manny Sanders here. I just loved this pairing with Drew Brees. I thought it was one of the sort of better under-the-radar off-season signings. Saints don't add a lot, but when they add, they found a great player who's just going to be a perfect fit with Brees, a technician of a receiver. This is going to be a shootout of a game against the Bucs. I think Emmanuel Sanders has a chance to really splash in his first game here. I think he goes 80 yards and a touchdown.
Wow. All right, Matt, I'm going to ask you to check on that chat one last time. Anyone dropping any emojis or anything we should discuss?
We do have an emoji drop, and it's from Taylor Ann Hackett on Facebook. We got beers, we got a stoplight, we got the siren, we got the ambulance. Well, that makes sense because we're talking about Kerryon Johnson or David Montgomery as the first question. Second one, Mike Evans or AJ Green. I'm going to go with Montgomery in the first group here. I don't love David Montgomery coming in a little banged up, but still going to prefer him over Kerryon Johnson in Detroit. And I mentioned AJ Green, wanted to take it a little slow earlier, but I would play AJ Green over Mike Evans. I would play, we didn't talk about Mike Evans too much during the show, coming in, he was doubtful, then he was questionable, whatever. I still think we are on decoy alert here. I would go with Green getting a quarterback upgrade here in week 1. Anyone else? We can take another question here. Well, we do have another great beautiful emoji drop. We've got what looks like an amoeba. There's a puke face, and there's a football, and there's someone wearing a mask. We appreciate you, John, and wearing a mask. Tough situation for 2 starting running back in PPR. They have Saquon as number 1. We talked about lowering his ceiling earlier. But who should be their number 2? Marlon Mack, Austin Eckler, or Nick Chubb? I'm going to go with Austin Eckler here for sure, facing a Bengals team that is just devastated at the linebacker position. We know they were horrible last year, and I love Eckler as a pass catcher. Love him as a touchdown threat. You got a lot of good running backs there, so I don't feel too bad for you. I don't really know how you drafted that combination, but I'm going Austin Eckler among that group for your second running back, looking for a ceiling there.
All right, well, before we go, let's get some final thoughts. What are y'all watching over the next 2 days? Andy, tell me what you're keeping your eye on.
Well, Matt mentioned that Chargers game with Austin Eckler. I'm looking at the other side. I want to see how Joe Burrow fares. I am super excited about this. I think that's a guy who can make a lot of fantasy noise immediately. He's got a great receiving core. He was unreal, obviously, as a collegiate player. I think he gets started with a huge game here, multiple touchdowns. Maybe he runs one in.
Ooh, I like that a lot. Matt, what about you? Which players or situations are you watching?
Yeah, I think one thing I've really got my eye on is, we saw that, honestly, the first game, the season opener, looked like a pretty normal NFL contest, but that could have been the fact that it was 2 good teams, one of the best teams in the NFL, and with the best player on the universe in the Chiefs. I want to see, what does everybody else look like? And most importantly, I want to see, does offense or defense sort of have the edge here in week 1? And is that going to be a trend that we see after such a long ramp up to the season, short practice time? Which of the 2 sides of the ball has the bigger advantage over the other in terms of the shortened preparation time?
Tank, give me one big thing, please.
Actually, I've been really it's been really good to see how athletes have been able to address these social issues that's been taking place in the country right now. And even though I'm excited as I don't know what for football to be back, I think I'm even more excited to see how these guys continue to perform in between the white lines and then also outside the white lines in order to continue to push positive change in this world. So much respect to the athletes across all sports.
All right, Minty, thank you for those thoughts, Tank. What about you in your first appearance on FFL? What are you watching these 2 days?
Keeping it short and sweet, I'm excited to see the Buccaneers flop. I think they were way overhyped, and I don't think they're going to do as well as everyone thinks.
Well, if you're talking about flops, I'm excited to see Paris Campbell finally flop so that we can see Michael Pittman ascend. That's a rookie that I love. I'm all aboard that hype train. And that is going to do it for this edition of Fantasy Football Live. Thanks for spending some of your Sunday with us. Remember, you can catch us all week long on the Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast. That's our podcast. We also have Mad Bets with new clips daily on Yahoo Sports. And of course, back here every Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. Good luck to all your fantasy teams in week 1, and we will see you next week. We're out. Happy football.